of us. Anyway, they're moving more to the east Juma. So they might be going there for a drink. I don't recognize this herd necessarily. You can see the big cow in picture there. That big cow, I think, is the matriarch. And they were all gathered around her. When the youngster was walking towards us, she did make a low rumble, and they gathered around her. And now they sort of turned from their northerly walk more towards the east now. There's a big waterhole just north of Juma called... just north of Juma in Biffle's Hook, and that's the kind of general direction that they're heading. And the elephants will have to drink a lot when the vegetation is so dry like this. That one is eating a very large piece of Combretum apiculatum. Chewing off the bark. So all this eating must be exhausting for them. Hour after hour they have to break sticks, branches, and chew and eat and find new food. Some are much easier because they'll graze mainly. But winter, it must be very tiring. And Ron's just watching us too. He's eating, but he's also watching us. A question from Empire Road in Johannesburg from Jemps. Very fine name you have there, Jemps. You want to know if elephants are left or right-tusked, like we might be left or right-handed. There is certainly some evidence to suggest that is the case. So you will find that some elephants have got shorter left or right tusks, and if you watch them carefully, they will use one tusk more than the other at times. But I don't think it's quite as defined as humans, and I certainly don't think it's as defined as, some people will talk about a master and a slave tusk, which I think is a particularly ridiculous way to describe it. What you do find, though, which I have discovered and read about in the last few days, is that they, tusks aside, what they tend to do is when they're picking up with their trunks, they have these circular muscles in their trunks that can turn either left or right. But apparently, specific elephants will decide whether to turn will use those muscles and turn their trunks either predominantly right or predominantly left. And what that does is wear the skin out on one side of the trunk underneath. You don't see it necessarily. You need to look pretty closely. But it definitely does seem to... They do seem to use one side of the trunk more than they do the other. He's taking a bit of a snack with him. 2 snacks, in fact. Resting them on the tusks and wedging them there with his trunk. I think that might be a young cow, actually. Very square head. And the youngsters always keep a little eye out on us. Sharon, one of our newer viewers, thank you for your question and thank you for taking the time out to ask us a question. You say sometimes elephants don't have tusks. Why is that? Well, Sharon, in the case of Indian elephants or Asian elephants, the females don't have tusks at all. In the case of African elephants, some are just born without tusks. Very few, I'd say probably about maybe 1% are born without tusks. Remember, the tusks are the incisor of teeth, and they erupt and come out of the mouth eventually. And then sometimes the tusk will break off, and that can be through overuse, but normally there'll be some kind of a disease, maybe in the nerve, that rots away the tooth and it'll then eventually break out. So that's basically why sometimes you don't see tusks. And normally, if an elephant has lost both tusks, they were born without them, but often you will see an elephant with one tusk where they've broken the other one. There's probably been some kind of an abscess or disease, rotted away the root, which has caused an infection, and then the tusk will break. Thank you, Sharon. Right, let us carry on with these elephants. So you can probably hear the young bull